Welcome back to Talk the Walk with me, Sarah Wong. I'm with Tommy Cheung, Liberal Party Chairman and Catering Sector Lawmaker. Thank you again, sir, for being on Talk the Walk.
You're welcome, Sarah.
Now, former Chief Secretary and CE candidate John Lee has expressed hope for Hong Kong and people's livelihood to return to normal as soon as possible. Have you conveyed your concerns to Mr. Lee, and what kind of feedback and assurances did you get from him?
I think I convey to not just him and Kerry and to everybody else. I mean, returning to normal. I've always said we don't die of COVID. We died of starvation. That is something that I think for administrators, they should always balance containing the virus and the economy, not just go very strict measures and then forgetting about that we all need to make a living. Now we're just not making a living, but people being tired or being restrained and restricted to staying home and not going anywhere, not going to the country park, etc. But during, if you have a big outbreak, of course, something needs to be done. But I think as much as you close things down, you should open things back up more quickly than what we have been seeing in the last couple of years.
I mean, so it sounds to me, from what you've been telling me, that you don't think it's a viable idea for Hong Kong to continue pursuing the dynamic zero strategy because of the insurmountable cost posed to your industry.
That's not what I meant, but I think the whole economy, I think we need to balance off. But obviously, there's always give or take, which I understand. My industry is hard hit, but like compared to tourism, it's even worse. But so where do we draw a line? I think I'm just a politician. It's easy for me to talk about a lot of things and criticize a lot of people. But I think the balancing should be in place. Whether we could do the zero thing, I don't know. China is pursuing it for a long time. And not led, but I know that if we don't keep zero, we will not be opening the Chinese border, where we can come and go both sides freely. And this is something I think the Liberal Party supported, my trade supported, because we need businesses from people coming to Hong Kong to do shopping. So does Peter Siu's retail business. And also, out of my 200 plus employees, working in the industry, I think 90% of them have families back in China that they haven't visited for 3-4 years, or 2-3 years. And opening up the borders is something we want to do. And if that takes to balancing whether we lose some business in the short run and having the border open up in the long run, I think this is something that we need to balance and accept, the sacrifice.
I mean, balance is obviously the key word here, and the one key term that underpinned the Hong Kong government's COVID strategy throughout the pandemic. And I wonder, from your interactions with restaurateurs in your trade, what did they tell you that is most needed and that can bring immediate relief to them? Is it cash? Is it subsidy? Or more leniency on property rent, for example?
Rent it's actually a basket of everything you said. Okay, we don't have the business and we that, and unfortunately, a lot of landlords are not giving us relief. They just say, "Oh, you get relief from the government." But actually, one thing happened in the last 4 or 5 months, despite the closing down, is a short of labor. Last quarter, in the last year, I in fact talked to the financial secretary. I said, "Paul, I bet you all my money. I don't know how the statistics is done, but I cannot believe we have a 7% unemployment rate in my sector." Yes. Okay, out of 200,000 people, that means, 10,000 or 14,000. I said, you give me 10,000 people, I will get them employment right away. I don't care, which department that they can be, whether they're dim sum chef, a cleaning lady, you give me 10,000, I will give them job. But obviously, then the closing down. But even during the close down, we are short of labor because you know why? By March, there's a law that came up that said we have to pay them sick leave, which is actually the right thing to do. When your staff is sick with COVID, you should pay them. But unfortunately, the sick leave pay is your whole year average, taking four-fifths of that, like 80% of it. But during the COVID time, we only pay half the salary because you only work half a day, which is not unfair. A lot of, employees enjoy that. But because of the COVID where you get infected or your family get infected, March 1st, we were short of like 20% of our people cannot go to work because of that. By March 15, only already 40%. So the shortage of labor is something we need to look at. The rent, and now we have the coupon, which is good. But also, I think restaurateurs needed some assurance, like the lunch business. No restaurants now worried about that they cannot open for lunch. If the same confidence that can be instilled in them and say, okay, no matter what happened, in fact, I've been fighting for that. No matter what happened, you let me see 2 until 10, okay? Worst case scenario, let me see 2 until 10. That I can accept. But even that, the government wouldn't accept it, in January and close all of a sudden at night business. I fought hard, but sometimes it feels like talking to a stone wall.
I mean, you mentioned the short of labor and the hardships of filling some of the job openings, but we've also seen worsening unemployment rate in Hong Kong. And I wonder that's kind of like what kind of situation, what's the big picture of the labor market in Hong Kong right now that we're looking at? And you mentioned difficulties of filling openings, but is there any obstacles or challenges of getting those workers in the catering industry who've been dismissed when things are hard back into the workforce? Have you seen any obstacles in that front?
We don't actually dismiss staff that I know. Most restaurants I know only come to an agreement with staff if they don't open, that they don't get paid, but they all keep their job. But the point is the staff cannot go on not knowing when they will have a job, when they will not have a job, or when they have income, when they don't. A lot of them change to other industries, even though it may be like construction, even though that it will be more harder work physically. But then at least they know, come what may, they have a job every day that they want. So a lot of them are moving out of the business. And once they move out, it's hard to move back in unless you tell them you will always be open. Then workers will be looking for something else.
I mean, sir, from what you've been telling me during the interview, I've heard a lot of grievances from you about how the government's been poorly calculating the risk and balance in containing the pandemic when it came to economic interests of the overall economic interests of Hong Kong people. Now, do you think there's a possibility, let's look at the big picture here, do you think there's a possibility that it's Hong Kong's trade-based, low-tax economic model and undiversified sources of government revenues that kind of give the room for the administration to comfortably look to the catering and retail industry for the necessary sacrifices during occasions like this? And what will be your takeaway from that?
I cannot complain about what government did, the relief that they gave us, especially the catering business. In fact, we are the envy of the town. I have heard so many people, even government officials, complain, why catering sector is getting so much relief. So
because you're the hardest hit together with tourism sector. Don't they understand that?
They all think that the sector are getting more worse hit than mine, but still, well, I don't compare things, but compared to the rest of the world, I think the government have been, in terms of subsidy and in terms of helping us. Now with the ESS, the second batch of ESS, 6 times that they come up with the relief, for restaurants. I'm not complaining. It's a lot of money. It's over 100. By now, should be over 100 million, $100 billion by now, and also with the coupon. So I'm not complaining. The only problem is, I think, when it comes to shutting down restaurants or night business, if they can really, really hold back, I always believe it's a knee-jerk reaction to say, let's close it for night. Simple and easy. But if you let it open, for nights, but just limiting the people from coming in, then I think once you see the statistic coming in, you will not be so knee-jerk into saying, let's shut it down. And when that is done, I think restaurants will be back to a healthy state.
All right. Wow, sir, we have to leave it here. Tommy Cheung, Catering Functioning Constituency Legislator and Liberal Party Chairman, thank you very much for coming on Talk the Walk to share your perspectives with us.
Thank you, Sarah.